Let's continue our discussion of chapter 14 by talking about depressive disorders. Depression is a significant issue. Uh, so about 20% of people experience a mood disorder at one point or another in their lives. But we're particularly concerned about new freshmen. And I think that there are a number of different reasons. One is homesickness, being away from the people and places and things that students are most comfortable with and really enjoy in their lives. They may not have the same support system at school as they did at home. They may not have people waking them up in the morning, reminding them to study, or just telling them that they love them. And those things matter. At home, you may have known everyone around you, where here, you may only know one or two people in each of your classes. And particularly during this, if you are an online student like this semester, that may be exacerbated. So a number of different things are happening here. There are other kinds of stressors that people experience. At school, you may have been one of the strongest students in your class, and here, maybe the expectations are different, and you are only comparing yourself to people who are going to college. You may need to be paying bills and balancing school and work and caring for family members. And so often my students are reporting lots of different things on their plate that impact them in a variety of ways. It may impact their ability to go to or to sleep well, to study, to care about how they're doing in school, and to commit the time and energy to do well. And it may lead to some students dropping out. I hope that if you are in this group, if you are someone who is at risk, that you reach out, because there are a number of us on campus who want to help you be successful. So let's talk about what depression is. Depression is 5 or more of these 9 symptoms occurring during the same 2-week period, which is a change from previous functioning. At least 2 of those symptoms need to be one or one of these first 2 symptoms. Now, that's kind of unusual. Most of us, when we're thinking about being depressed, we may even just focus on this first symptom without thinking about the others. So we're often talking about something more severe, something that's lasting a longer period of time. Okay, so there are mood symptoms, which you're finding in number 1 and 2, depressed mood most of the day, nearly every day, or markedly diminished interest or pleasure in all or almost all activities. There are bodily or somatic symptoms, so a lot of weight loss or change in appetite, insomnia or hypersomnia, either psychomotor agitation, can't sit still, or just feeling like you don't have any energy. And then there's problems with fatigue and loss of energy. In addition, there are also cognitive symptoms, things like feelings of worthlessness or inappropriate guilt, problems with thinking and concentrating or indecisiveness, and recurrent thoughts of death. suicidal ideation without a plan, or a suicide attempt, or a specific plan for committing suicide. That doesn't mean if you're someone with only four symptoms, ask for help. You know, even 2 or 3 symptoms can really make life much more difficult and impair your ability to do well in school. And you can certainly see that in these symptoms. You know, your hypersomnia may make it more difficult to go to class. Difficulties in concentrating may make it more difficult for you to pay attention in class. You may not even care about studying in the way that you did when you weren't depressed. And all of these things impact your performance. So when we're talking about depression, we're talking about people whose mood fluctuates between the normal and depressed moods across time. Contrast that with bipolar disorder, where we're talking about people who sometimes have moods in the manic states, sometimes normal moods, and sometimes depressed moods, if we're looking across time. The kinds of things that people report tend to be fairly different, so that people in a depressed episode, so one of those lows, experiences in terms of moods a lot of dysphoria, you know, bad moods, not being able to experience pleasure in the way that they usually did, and a sense of hopelessness. While people in a manic episode report much more euphoria and excessive pursuit of pleasurable activities and unwarranted optimism. When we're talking about behaviors, people in a depressive episode report a lot more fatigue, loss of energy, insomnia, problems with slow speech and movement, and a lot of social withdrawal. Where people in a manic episode describe themselves as tireless and hyperactive. They don't need as much sleep and don't want as much sleep. They're speaking very rapidly and their thoughts are fleeting. They're racing. And a lot of increased sociability. In a depressive episode, people who are depressed tend to have problems thinking and making decisions. Their thought tends to be slow, characterized by a lot of worry and rumination, where they're thinking about things over and over. It's a lot of guilt and self-blame, unrealistic, negative self-evaluations. Where in a manic episode, there's a lot of grandiosity. Their plans are large and unrealistic. Their decision-making is poor. Their thoughts are racing. They're distractible and impulsive. Their self-esteem is grandiose, and so is their self-confidence. And you can see how both of these might cause people significant problems. Now, there seems to be significant evidence about neurochemical changes, neurotransmitters in the brain that impact both thought processes and depression. The thought processes impact depression, and so remember in chapter 4, we were talking about the cognitive model and how you can change your thoughts. If you address those thoughts, you are likely to be much less anxious and much less depressed. But these go in both directions, right? So you want to pay attention to that. Now, there is some evidence that negative thinking, while neurochemistry impacts our depression and thinking, that it also goes in the opposite direction, that our negative thinking impacts our neurochemistry. So just interesting pattern there. People who are depressed tend to have poor social skills, and as a result acquire fewer reinforcers, such as good jobs and good friends. They're much more likely to be rejected because of their own irritability, pessimism, and reassurance seeking. So people who are depressed may normally be very likable, but during depression, not so much. And they experience low levels of social support, all of which increase their experience of depression. As we're thinking about this, what I want you to be thinking about is this relationship between mental health and physical health. So how we're approaching things can really make a difference. And, let's work within that. Make sure that you're exercising, sleeping well, eating well, and taking care of yourself. And take care.